Okay, here we are. And guess what? This is the 5th time I've tried to record this audio. I may or may not have shed a tear or two over lost audio. I've been trying to get this video out for a long time, and let's just say my feathers are rustled and my buttons are pushed. But hey, it's Friday, I've got a drink, I'm chilling, and hopefully this will be the very last time I record this audio, and then this tutorial will be finished and beautiful and out to everyone who wants to try painting along with me. This little purple cloud with 2 little palm trees and a big old pink sky. I'm using a tiny little painting as my reference photo. I'm doing this in like a beginner style tutorial. So getting started, a lot of people ask me what brand of paint I use. I'm always like, because the brand of paint is not that important to me. You can see I'm using a bunch of different brands, but what's important to me is the color of the paint, and particularly for this one, quinacridone magenta, or any kind of magenta, is going to be super important to get those vibrant pinks. If you're just using red and white to get your pinks, you're going to be more disappointed than using a beautiful, brilliant magenta. So if you can pick one of those up from the store, it's going to be great. Here I've got my water, because we're doing acrylic painting, which you wash off with water. And I've got a paper towel that I fold up and tuck right underneath my easel, so that way when I'm brushing off the water off my brushes, it doesn't go flying across the table, which is no fun at all. I'm also using a piece of MDF board as my canvas. You can see it's not gessoed. I normally have my MDF boards gessoed, but that's because I'm using oil paints. Acrylics are water-based paints. I don't have to worry about having a gesso layer on top, so I'm just going straight in with my colors, and what I'm doing first is mixing up a pretty purple and slapping it right on that little piece of wood there, just covering up the entire thing so that I have just some paint to work on top of. That way I can build up the colors. I almost always do this with my paintings. And then I scrape up my excess paint off my palette so I have more room to work on, and then I scrape off extra dog hairs that get on my painting because my dog sheds like nobody's business. Now I've mixed up a pretty magenta color, and I'm gonna add a decent amount of water so that it's kind of less opaque, because right now I'm drawing out where the sky is and where the clouds are. I'm kind of just outlining the purple areas being where the clouds are and the pink being where the sky is. Yes, pink for the sky. It's a little unconventional, but I've never done pink sky before, so I wanted to give it a shot. So you can see on the bottom I have a puffy kind of cloud, and the top I have a cloud going all the way through the middle of it. And right now I'm just putting on that pink paint, making sure that I'm outlining where my clouds are going to be, the pink areas being where the sky is, the purple areas being where the clouds are going to be. And this is my little blending technique I use for acrylics. I'll get my paintbrush a little bit wet, and while the paint is still wet on my board, I just blend in the hard edges, so that way it softens itself up a bit. Bindi, you do not scratch at my door right now. If I have to record this audio again, I'm gonna explode. Hush. Hush, baby. And I'm going in with another layer. What I'm attempting to do with this is create like a gradient where it's lighter pink on the bottom and a darker pink at the top. So I'm covering all that up, doing a nice layer there, and again, using that blending technique where I take a wet paintbrush and I blend out the hard edges while the paint is still wet. You gotta be kind of quick about it. Adding another layer, just adding all that on. And now I mixed up a very light lavender because I'm starting to do the highlights on my puffy cloud on the bottom. So I'm not using a real reference photo for this, I'm just kind of using that little painting I did before when there's not a lot of detail in it. So I'm going into adding the highlights knowing that I have my light source coming from the top left part of my painting. And so I'm just kind of dabbing in lighter areas where I think maybe light would hit and just going for it. And here I'm adding little bits of just slightly darker areas. I'm going in and just adding a little more darker colors to my original paint blob, and trying to attempt to get some kind of gradient with my cloud. Now I'm adding more of like a mid-tone, very softly blending in all that. Trying to create areas where it's starting to get a little bit shadowed, but not too much. Light still hits these areas, but not nearly as much as the most highlighted areas, which are going to be the edges of the cloud. Getting even darker, adding in all those shadows, and darker even still. So far so good on audio recording. What my issue was before, multiple times, was that my computer fan would start whirring like my computer was gonna set on fire or it wanted to take off like a helicopter, and it was so loud, it corrupted my audio so bad. It just like oh, it was gnarly and unusable, and it's doing okay so far. I'm using a different method to record, and it's not making my computer explode this time. So now I'm going in with extra highlighting areas. I want the lighting on this cloud to be pretty dramatic. So I'm adding in these very defined highlights, and I'm gonna do this a couple times throughout the painting to build up those colors, but I want the light on this cloud to just have some drama to it. Create a lot of contrast is what it's doing. The more contrasty it is, the more it catches your eye and it looks less like a weird blob that's kind of muddy. So it may look muddy now, but we're building up and building up. Here I'm going in with an even lighter color for those highlights. Going in the areas where I'm thinking that the top ridges of the puffs of the cloud are gonna be, and that's where the light is gonna hit. Now I'm going with some darker paint again, just really trying to define the shadow areas slowly. So I'm not going with the darkest amount of paint at first. I'm going in with a slightly darker amount of paint and then building up to more and more dark layers of my shadows. I'm also defining the little cloud that goes across the very top a little bit more. Oh, look at that. Going in with another layer of that background color. I really want this background layer to be super opaque, so I don't want any of that dark purple that I put on initially to see through to it, because I want it to be a nice, blended, beautiful pink sky. I'm using that water blending technique again, and going in and trying to create a little more depth on that wispy cloud. I like that it has some wispiness, but I do want to define those areas on the bottom is a little bit darker than the areas on the top, so it has a little more dimension to it. Going in again with the layers of the sky and really trying to make the lighter part and the bottom part blend together. And I'm also creating more contrast between the top of the sky and the bottom of the sky, so it really looks like it's darker at the top, fading to a lighter sky. And now for my very favoriteest part, I'm taking my tiniest brush I have, rolling it so I'm getting not that much paint on it, and then very slowly and softly putting in a tiny little moon at the top. I love doing this, it's my favorite. It makes my whole painting seem so magical, and I'm just dotting in a bunch of little stars. I'm getting my stars to be as small as I possibly can. I found the smaller I can make my stars, the more realistic I feel like my sky is. So here I am again, creating more lighting drama. I really want that light to be super dramatic, so I'm going in and making another layer of highlights that are super contrasting with the rest of the cloud, so that you can really see where the light is hitting it. And in this painting too, the light is kind of surrealist. It's kind of fanciful. My sun in this painting has already set. It's way down low in the sky, but still I'm having this light source coming from the top. So it's kind of magical, fanciful, but that's what I like about not exactly using a reference photo for painting, because I can kind of make the sky look however I want it to be. I can have imaginary light sources. Ready, painting away. And finally, I'm putting a little black on my palette. So I almost never use black in my paintings, but for this guy, I want to make little silhouettes of those palm trees. I'm taking that black, adding a little bit of magenta and a little bit of blue, so it gets kind of a purpley kind of tone to it. And I'm very slowly and carefully creating a thin line up to maybe like a 3/4 of the way up my painting, maybe lower. 2/3 of the way up my painting, and slowly thickening it, having it thicker at the bottom and a little thinner at the top, and then creating a little bulb-like thing at the top, which palm trees tend to have where they have their little palm fronds pop out from. So now I'm very vaguely drawing the lines of where my palm fronds are going to be. I'm not putting in the detail yet, I'm just kind of putting in where I want them to be, and then I'll slowly go in with a very thin brush to add the detail. Now I'm thickening them a little bit, adding a couple of those little leaves that are on them. And I'm also drawing out the very rough lines of what each palm frond looks like, because I want each palm frond to be defined on its own. The palm fronds are not one big clump of leaves, they're individual giant leaf things, arms, little palm tree arms, I don't know what. So now, step 2 is doing the exact same thing again, but a little bit smaller this time, right next to this palm tree. Another little palm tree, a nice little friend. And this time I'm doing this palm tree just a little bit smaller, so that kind of looks like that palm tree is a little bit in the distance from the palm tree that we just did initially. It could also be just a smaller palm tree, but I like to think that it's just slightly more in the distance. Now I'm going in with a very thin brush again and slowly adding more details to each palm frond. And there we go, that's it. Pretty basic, pretty quick painting. This took me about 45 minutes to an hour to paint total. Not too long at all. This is a very simple painting, but it turned out cute. It was a very simple, quick painting, but I want to do something very quick and pretty beginner so you can see some of the processes I use to paint with acrylics. If you like this video, I have a bunch more on my YouTube channel that you could check out. I'm also on Instagram at Emily Mackey Art. I have a website, emilymackeyart.com, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you in the next video.